So it doesn't make sense to me.
Protesters started their rally from the street where Freddie Gray was arrested in Baltimore toward the city's police department. They were carrying placards bearing the message Black Lives Matter. The Justice Department has opened an investigation into Gray's death, which once again sparked angry protests over police brutality across the country. 25-year-old Gray was arrested on April the 12th and died a week later. His autopsy showed that he had died from a severe injury to his spinal cord. Police suspended the 6 officers involved and pledged to properly investigate the case. To discuss that a bit further, I joined Mr. Chris Dorsey, who is a civil rights advocate, who is joining us live now via Skype from Richmond. Mr. Dorsey, thanks very much for joining us here on PressTV. Now, in the context, of course, of the Freddie Gray case, how do you see the overall police brutality issue in the United States, especially with the many cases we've seen recently?
Well, I would say that it is the rule and not the exception, and that this is in fact their policy, because what the police are is a standing army that is unconstitutional. It is forbidden under the law of the land of the United States to have a force, a military force, occupying this country, and that's what the police are, because there have been more Americans killed by police over the past 5 years than soldiers serving in a war zone in Iraq and Afghanistan. So basically, over the past year, in 2014, there were hundreds and hundreds of innocent Americans killed by the police, and nothing happens. And that is because they are nothing more than an unconstitutional institution that puts forward the will of the central banks and the institutions that control the United States government. And the occupying force in Iraq that is of the United States military is no different than the police forces in the state of Maryland or the state of Virginia. And I also want to say that also in Maryland on Friday, Darrell Brown was murdered by Hagerstown police, and that's Hagerstown, Maryland. And this goes on, and it's not just black individuals, because more white individuals were killed by police than have been black individuals, even though maybe a higher percentage are black. But also in Frederick, Maryland, Robert Ethan Saylor, a 26-year-old man with Down syndrome, was killed by police. So this is not an unusual event. This is the rule, and it's unlawful, and these folks need to be neutralized under the law.
We have about a minute left, Mr. Dorsey. I'm wondering what you're saying. Do you think that your fellow Americans realize what's happening?
They have absolutely no idea that what's happening. They have absolutely no idea that they live in a police state, because they are compliant to the police state, because they do comprehend that if one does not comply with the police, that they're subject to be killed. What they don't understand is the police are only there to serve the people, and that God creates man and man creates government, and the people create the United States government, so therefore they can never be subject to the police or anyone else. The police are only their servants. And I will say one more thing, that we have demanded disarmament directly with the Chief of Police, Alfred Durham, in the city of Richmond, and this is the Virginia militia that's carrying this out, and we're always armed when we're talking to the police. We know that the institutions that control the United States government, the Federal Reserve Bank and the Bank for International Settlements, are the enemy. We are at war with them, and the police are their proxies, and we take that to heart, and we note it very well.
Okay, we'll leave it there at that, but Mr. Dorsey, as always, we do appreciate your insight. That was Mr. Chris Dorsey, who was speaking to us live from Richmond.
Thank you very much.
And that is all for this edition of Press TV's Top 5. Don't go anywhere, though. The light is next.
Thanks so much, Mr. Dorsey. I appreciate it.
God bless.
In Brazil.